In the previous video, you saw how to mark fractions on a number line. Number lines are based on a common tool, the ruler. In this video, you'll use ideas for marking a number line with fractions to figure out what the marks between the numbers on a ruler mean.
Here we have a ruler that has different scales on two sides. This side has inches, and this side has metric. It says that what it really means is centimeters. You have to turn it over to have it run from the left. Let's figure out what the marks on this inch ruler mean. So they have numbers for a number of inches. In fact, let's see, so an inch is about the distance from my tip of my pointer to the first knuckle, so that really is inches. But then there are all these marks in between that don't have a number on them. So you have to be able to figure that out, or else just to be familiar enough to just know what they are. So let's look at the part just between 2 and 3. So you can see there's a mark halfway in between. And I'm going to fold a paper. This paper is going to represent the piece from 2 to 3. So it's kind of like zooming in on this piece, except I've just physically had a bigger version. So here's the midway point. Here's the halfway point. Now looking on the ruler again, halfway between 2 and the midpoint, there's another one halfway. So half of a half is a fourth. And you could get that position by folding the half in half. And that line is slightly less long. So there's a fourth. And there's another one between a half and 3, halfway again. So that's also the distance is a fourth. But if I'm marking this not like a number line, it goes in fourths. 1/4, 2/4 is the same as a half. This is actually 3/4. So this is 2 and a fourth. If I count by fourths, we've got 2 and a fourth, 2 and 2/4, 2 and 3/4, 2 and 4/4. Oh, 4/4 is the same as 1, so 2 and 4/4 is 3. That checks out. Okay, we're at 2 and a fourth. The number halfway between 2, or the mark halfway between 2 and 2 and a fourth, well, what's half of a fourth? It's an eighth. So this mark is 2 1/8 inches from the left side of the ruler. And this would be 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8 gets us to the next whole number. Okay, here's my 1/8 mark. Halfway between 2 and 1/8, half of an eighth is a 16th. So the space between the two closest marks is 1/16. So 2 and 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 sixteenths. That checks out. Okay, so practice with that. Make sure you're familiar with how the marks look, and see if after a while you can just tell by looking at it which denomination you've got. Okay, so let's look at several different rulers. They're not quite all the same. Let's see, here's a ruler. It says, math rule. It's got 4 different scales. So the first thing is, what unit is it marked in? Well, this one actually tells you, and it tells you the size, 1/16 of an inch. Maybe that's really, maybe that's why it's a math ruler, because it tells you things. The other side says it's marked in centimeters. So centimeter is about the width of my little finger. And this side also has centimeters. It doesn't say centimeters on this side, it says metric. It's another word for general measurements that include centimeters. So if you look at the centimeters, you want to figure out what is the size of this subdivision between every 2 marked numbers. So it does have a halfway point, but here you might have to count. So the number of spaces is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the other part will be another 5. So there are 10 spaces between 1 and 2. That means each subdivision is 1/10. So that should remind you of this fraction strip number line that's marked in tenths. So the 1/2 mark will be this one, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces on the other side. So this is just like a blown up big version of this scale marked in centimeters. Okay, so a question to think about is find as many rulers and things that are marked with scales like number lines as you can. So here I have a bunch of different rulers. There's rulers. Figure out what the units are. Figure out what the subdivisions mean. So here's a tape measure that only has inches, but it also has feet, and it's got even more marks between the inches. So look at the still on the screen to try to figure out what each subdivision there is. Okay, here's another tape measure. Oh, this one has 2 very different scales. They're not lined up. So what are the units? What do the markings between the marked numbers mean? Here's another thing you can probably find somewhere. If you know somebody who cooks, or if you have one at home, here's a measuring cup, and it's kind of like marked as in a number line. Notice that here's 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 cup, 1/4, 1 1/2, 3/4, 2 cups. They're not very consistent because this says 1/4, but it really means 1 1/4. They also tell you ounces for the same marks, and pints, and here's thirds. Interesting. If you look on the back, it gives you some metric measurements in milliliters. Okay, here's another number line that you probably have seen around. It's a thermometer. It's got 2 different scales. Let's turn it sideways so it looks more like the way you use a ruler. So notice this says degrees C, which is centigrade or Celsius, and this is degrees F or Fahrenheit, which we mostly use in the US. Most other countries use centigrade or Celsius. And figure out what the spaces between the marked numbers mean. This has the advantage that you can use this to convert between Fahrenheit and centigrade. So for example, if it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, that would be about, well, whatever this mark is between 0 and 10 centigrade. So find as many number line things as you can and figure out what all the marks mean.